Welcome back to another episode of Generally Assembled, your favorite House Republican podcast. Jason Gottesman here, joined by House Republican Education Chairman, Representative from Bedford and Fulton Counties, Jesse Topper.
Great to be with you, man. We're back again.
So here we are. It is June the 5th. We celebrate the 80th anniversary of D-Day tomorrow. And that means we are 25 days away from the budget deadline. And
in the midst of the PIAA baseball playoffs.
Yep.
Just another little fun factoid.
And man, I'm loving baseball right now. I mean, I haven't watched any PIAA baseball. But.
No, but this is the time. You got the College World Series. You've got high school playoffs. You've got and for those who watch Major League Baseball, it feels like the games are starting to mean something now.
Yes.
Like we've had that, it's still early in the year. It's still early in the year. You have that in April and May. But once June hits, now it's like, now we're really starting to see these races for divisions take shape. And this is definitely getting into the meat of baseball season.
And as Charlie Manuel once said, once you're in summertime, you're in hitting season.
That's right.
So,
the ball just comes off the bat in a different way when it's warm.
Yeah, and the same thing with the golf club.
Yeah, absolutely. You're seeing some. Hey, look, it's a great time to be a Pennsylvania sports fan. I mean, we got the Pittsburgh's going to host the draft.
Yep.
You've got the U.S. Open and PGA Championship coming to PA. You just had the Women's Open in PA in terms of golf.
The World Cup Soccer is coming.
World Cup Soccer is coming for the 6 people that care about that. So I mean, this is a big deal in Pennsylvania.
And
sorry. I'm sorry, soccer fans. I'm joking, clearly.
It's called football.
I know.
In Europe.
Yes, it is called that in Europe.
Yes.
And other places.
That's really the only thing I figured out about soccer, other than you hit the ball in the goal and you can't use your hands unless you're the goalie.
Mm-hmm.
But offsides, still have no idea.
No, I don't know offsides. That was a great. So actually, this is going to sound straight. The most I learned about soccer was watching Ted Lasso.
Me too. My wife has played soccer competitively while we've been married, and I don't know.
Yeah, no, I learned watching that a little bit. Because I could relate to maybe Ted Lasso. But anyway, it was I of course speak in jest. But no, from back to the real point of these are big events that are going to be happening in Pennsylvania in multiple sports, and of course, hopefully the Pirates and the Phillies can bring some playoff action into the mix as well. And
the Phillies for sure. I don't know about
should be a good
Pirates.
time over the next couple of years. Over the next couple years.
But man, I was driving yesterday. I was driving home, and then I took my son to the pool after I got home, and we had a great time, by the way. Thanks for asking. But I noticed, I was like, what a great time to be in Pennsylvania. It's just, I'm sure in your drive back and forth from Harrisburg to Bedford,
beautiful.
It's just such a beautiful state.
So we've all traveled the country, right?
Yeah.
You've been out, you went to school in Montana.
Mm-hmm.
I've been out in the Midwest, and I've been down south, and every, we've been up north. Every part of the country certainly has its appeal. You know what I would miss if I was in Pennsylvania, the mountains. I love that drive from Bedford to Harrisburg on the Turnpike, through Fulton County, the mountains in the morning. Just it's beautiful. It's breathtaking. I would really miss the mountains if I were in a different part of geographically.
And they have their own beauty. I was reflecting about the mountains in Montana compared to the mountains in Pennsylvania, and there you have so much forest fire, so you have so many mountains that are bare.
Mm-hmm.
But they have this beautiful grass, and it's green grass that grows on some of the lower ones, and then in the fall time and in the summer and fall, it gets brown, and it's just absolutely beautiful. And then the same thing, I was actually talking with somebody earlier today about this wonderful drive up US 93 coming out of Missoula, Montana, where you go through the Mission Mountain Valley and you make this turn, and all of a sudden the tallest mountains you've almost ever seen in your entire life are just right there, and it's in this beautiful, the Mission Valley, and it's so wide, and these giant mountains are just on either side, and that's breathtaking. Mm-hmm. But it's also similarly breathtaking seeing the lush green trees on mountaintops,
and then in the fall
woods.
they change colors.
Yes, and it's just a wonderful time of the year. But unfortunately, Chairman Topper, we're going to spend most of this time
inside
in this building.
Yeah, it's June, and so we're going to be down here majority of the month trying to get this done, and I'm hoping that we can start to realize what it takes to get something done in split government. What we've seen this week, at least on our side of the building in the House, has been the opposite. We just had a major education changes to the formula, cuts to cyber charters. This huge bill, 87-page bill, moved through committee the day after it was introduced. The language was made available. Moved through committee the next day. Moved through rules today. On second consideration on the floor today. This is not something that is conducive to attracting bipartisan support. And why is that important? Well, if we had just one party in control of government, it wouldn't be important. But we don't in Pennsylvania. As the governor likes to remind everybody time and time again, this is divided government. And I'm concerned when I see maneuvers like this, even though there are parts of that bill that I know many of our members can support. There's parts that are absolutely non-starters. The fact that you're using these maneuvers to position bills suggests that we might not be able to find that common ground that we need to in Pennsylvania to be able to pass a budget. Because this isn't Alabama, where Republicans can pass whatever they want, and this isn't California, where Democrats can pass whatever they want. This is Pennsylvania. In addition to having beautiful mountains, and it's a great place to come and visit and tour and have recreation, it is also a place of divided government, and we need to govern accordingly. And if we don't, that June 30th deadline is going to be here before we know it, and we're not going to have that kind of common ground we need to pass a budget.
Yeah, we don't have the continental divide here in Pennsylvania. We have the political divide.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chuck, that's the title.
Book it. Book it.
But no,
Trademark it.
I think you're absolutely right. And what you're seeing right now is I think very late in the process, actually, people finally setting their priorities and showing what their hands are, right? So you have Democrats moving the BEFC in a way that reflects everything that they want, not anything that can be a final product in our eyes and probably in the eyes of a number of Republicans I'm in both chambers.
And some Democrats in both chambers,
yes,
including the guy who has to sign it at the end.
Exactly.
Right.
So you have that. You have the tax cuts, which have been proposed by Senate Republicans, and then this week we introduced a House version. You have some of this healthcare stuff now this week, today, moving in relation to penny and healthcare subsidies. So the pieces are starting to float out there in terms of overall priorities. But it seems to me, and you've been a member now for, I believe I heard
11
you say
years.
11 years recently, have seen these budgets materialize into things. A lot of times putting the big pieces in play now is a bad sign for getting something done on time.
Yeah, but I think it's one thing when you put them in play out in public, right? But there's also those conversations that are going on in every office, right? Trying to figure out that's what I feel is missing here. There's a lot of posturing, but even amidst
a lot of public
posturing,
right,
you can still be having really solid discussions. It's almost like those are going away right now. And I'm hopeful that we can get everything back on track. But again, when it comes to education, we understand new money. We understand new money going out. But it has to be going with a purpose. It has to be going out with parameters. We have to ensure the money that we spent during COVID from the federal dollars that has just disappeared into the ether of the educational apparatus, and no one knows what it did for kids. It's staggering, right?
Yep.
We cannot allow that to happen again.
And why we're not seeing educational improvement as a result of that massive funding, and you've said this from higher education to basic education, accountability has to be part of the equation.
And the accountability isn't for us.
Right.
The accountability is not for us. It's for the kids.
Right.
We have
their
to
families.
ensure that those students are receiving the opportunities that they need. And if that needs to be done through more funding, then we need to make sure that that's what the funding's going towards. And that's the piece that we're missing right now. I'm willing, I said this in committee, I will say this on the floor, I'm willing to have those conversations, but we know there has to be components of this that are student-centered in terms of achievement, and right now we just don't see enough of that. And I believe that, and I said this in committee, and this is kind of tough sometimes for people to wrap their heads around, tough for me to wrap my head around sometimes. Education is elevated in communities that are doing really well economically. We know that. We understand that data. Well, instead of just saying then take more money into schools where the communities are struggling, why isn't our answer, and this is where the tax cuts come in, why isn't our answer, let's elevate those communities, right? If we see those communities become better economically, then we see crime lowered and we see school achievement raised.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's not about putting a Band-Aid or covering up a wound. Sometimes it's about getting to the root cause. And one of the root causes of poverty, which is one of the root causes of schools that are in crisis, is we're not elevating those communities economically. And so, yes, the education part of the budget is very important, but the other parts of the budget that increase economic development also relate back to education.
Yep.
Because if Pennsylvania becomes strong economically across the board, school achievement will rise. So that has to be part of it. That's why tax cuts, you say, well, what does that have to do with education? Well, it has to do with reinvesting into our economy, growing economic prosperity for families across Pennsylvania. That will only help education.
And let's tie this back into the tax cuts as well, because when you look at a PIT cut, most small businesses and sole proprietorships pay the PIT, the personal income tax. It's not just a tax cut for individuals and families, which is great, but it's a tax cut for small businesses, which impact communities, especially in rural Pennsylvania, because there's not the population base to have a major company, but to be able to set up, hire local folks, have more money in their pockets that they can then reinvest into the community. And it's a self-perpetuating cycle of success when you give people more of their own money to spend how they see fit, and when you give businesses a break to invest in their own business and grow their own business. You're investing in those communities, which then grows and helps everybody else.
Because communities that are successful attract the right demographics, right? Young working families that are working, paying taxes both locally and at the state level, right? And investing in those communities. If you can create those opportunities in the areas that we have crisis in our education, you will see education improve.
Right.
We again, the data has shown it. Now the other side sees that and says, well, poverty is a driving force, so we need to inject money into those schools. But if you just inject money into the schools and the community is still in crisis with poverty, crime, all of those things, what is eventually going to happen to that school, no matter how much money you give it? It will be drawn back into the community that is in crisis. So it has to be holistic. And right now, all we're seeing is one fix, right? Money directly to the schools. And again, I'm not arguing against money to our schools. We know education is expensive. But if you don't take it in a holistic approach with these other policy changes, it's not going to work. Sure. And at the end of the day, it shouldn't just be about numbers on a page. It should be about, is this going to work? Is the goal that we have set out, which is student achievement growing in these areas, is the money actually going to go and help that? And if it's not, then we need to figure out what is.
Yeah. Well, we've also said, and I just want to make clear, this is not anti-public school either. You've often said that for most people, going to your public school is going to be the best option. It's
pro-public school.
Right, exactly.
It's saying that we want these dollars to actually help the schools that they're intended to help.
Yes.
And if we don't change some of the things around the policy surrounding these communities and these schools, the money's not going to help. I know it. I know it for a fact that the money will only help if it is used the right way and the community around that school district is growing. That's just a reality of it, where we're at in Pennsylvania. So, again, I'm excited to hop into those talks. We just need to be having those conversations as opposed to just, well, if we increase X amount of dollars, then these schools will be successful. Trust me, if I felt that was the case, if I felt that was all that was needed to make some of these schools successful for these kids, I'd do it in a heartbeat. Absolutely do it in a heartbeat.
Well, I know being a former public school student myself, the one thing I always hated was accountability, especially from my parents.
Yeah, I mean, accountability is not a fun word, right? It's easy. It's more easy to talk about investments. That's the word.
But
that's the word we use in government, by the way. We don't use spending anymore. If you notice, it's investment. We're going to invest.
Yes.
Well, investments require return.
Yeah.
Right?
Otherwise, you're just throwing away money.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Well, U.S. Women's Open was here.
Yeah. Lancaster Country Club held its
it was beautiful
head up
out
high,
there.
right?
I was out there. Even the areas where you walk across the fairways were beautiful. I was like, I could still play off this walkway. Like, I don't know what like, geez, the greens were I stood by the 14th green and the 15th tee, and I was literally standing maybe 5 feet away from the left side greenside bunker on 14, and it was just the nicest manicured bunker I've ever seen in my entire life. I was like, it's just beautiful. I just want to look at this bunker. It was amazing.
So the course, it was set up, well by the USGA in terms of creating what they want in a U.S. Open, which sometimes is carnage. I mean, those women. I mean, a couple of those scores. Nelly Korda, top female player in the world, taking a 10 on a par 3 that I birdied at one time. But anyway, I'm just going to throw that out there. It was set up a little different for those of us playing in an outing that day than it was for the pros.
Yes, but still an incredibly difficult. But
just
golf course.
watching, what we saw in terms of the golf course was great. But from everything I heard, listening to the radio and watching on TV, Lancaster as an area, right? Just
yes,
everybody had great things to say about it. It was a showcase event for the best women golfers in the world, and I'm once again proud of it. Proud of Pennsylvania.
I mean, I was there with my wife, and I kept telling her, I was like, this person is one of the best in the world. So this is one of the best golfers in the world right here. One of the best golfers right here. You look at it right over here. Best golfer in the world right there. Mm-hmm. It was as a golf fan, and I do follow women's golf not as much as I do men's golf, but I still follow it regularly because I'm a golf fan. If golf's on TV, I'm watching. DP World Tour. I even follow the Epson Tour, which is never on TV. I check the leaderboards, want to know who's coming up.
I'll tell you what, I've watched a lot more last couple of years because they've put it on at every level. Is college golf.
Yes,
you see so much more of the NCAA's, not just the Division I. But there's a lot more college golf being, and I love watching it. When they're attacking these golf courses, they have no fear.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of times when I'm watching the men's game, a lot of them talk about playing away from trouble. It just seems to me that some of these, because a lot of the female golfers are very young. They have that quicker trajectory sometimes to pro golf. Man, there's no fear.
Yeah.
I mean, they're taking on some pins. I've certainly never seen at Lancaster Country Club the pins in some of those locations. I mean, you were there live, so you could see how close.
The pin on 14 was tucked behind the right side. It was Sunday pin, tucked behind the right side bunker, and if you went left, which you were basically forced to do, you had a 3-foot left to right sweeper that you had to try to make that was downhill.
And if you played to the middle of the green, you had a very long putt.
A long putt that broke.
Right.
I mean, I was, and I'm standing there and I'm trying to read the putt. I'm like, yeah, does it go left, right? Yeah, and I'm watching these best golfers in the world aim so far left, and I'm like, that's too far left. And then, lo and behold, snaps right either.
Don't you think that? So, I've heard people talk all the time that when you professional golf or big time college golf, everybody hits the ball 300 and over. Now, yes, some guys like Rory take it even, or Bryson take it even a further extreme. But for the most part, what always separates is the short game, and it's more specifically the putting. And you really see that when you're there live.
Yeah, and I also remind myself, too, that like when I'm standing there and I'm looking at this putt, a lot of these golfers get to play the course a number of times before they go out. And they have a kind of an idea of where pins might be. And they'll stand there and they'll take, they'll play the front 9 and take 3-4 hours to play, which is usually twice the amount of time. And they'll roll balls around. The caddies go out. They see what other people are doing. So the intelligence that pro golfers have on a golf course, and even high-level college and amateur golfers, is much more than a guy showing up at a country club or a public golf course on day one and trying to play it. It's a different dynamic, a different scenario, right?
Right.
You're trying to find out what the greens are, what they're doing, and so, but the time, hearing the conversations between caddies and players. Watching how players set up to shots, the routines they have, the different ways that they stand over balls, or it's just a master class in learning everything that you do as an amateur that could be better and that separates you from a professional golfer. And there's so much talk out there that's so inappropriate of, I could do that better, I could hit that shot better, and you hear that at PGA Tour tournaments as well, right?
No, you can't.
No, you can't. You can't.
No, you can't do what they can do. Not only are you missing that putt, you're missing it pretty bad.
But it also brings out a bigger point, and that is, at the PGA Championship on Sunday, what was the difference between Xander Schauffele and Bryson DeChambeau? It wasn't who was hitting the ball 350. It wasn't how much spin was on people's wedges. It came down to, can Xander Schauffele make an 8-foot putt for birdie?
Right.
No rolling the ball back.
Yep.
No equipment changes will ever change the fact that major championships will still be decided by the last hole with a 6-foot putt.
Preach. Preach.